I read women talking right about the time that the Me Too movement was starting to codify itself. It wasn't surprising news, but it was a movement that was kind of building in a more organized way, in a more politically active way, and a more perhaps a movement that had some kind of uh, practical end and of some kind of justice being served. So I thought I was getting very confused about the conversation and how I felt about what was happening, talking with my friends about it. And when I read Miriam's novel, which opened up the debate of what happens after, what is the future of gender politics in our world, that made me think, oh, this is something that I want to see. It's a nuanced and a humorous and a intellectual debate about the possibilities for the future and not just the chasm of doubt. I think what Miriam did was take an event that happened in an actual community of women and then went after and built the fictional narrative of what happens when a group of women who have dealt with assault by the males of their community gather to vote on three possibilities: staying and forgiving the assault, staying and fighting the perpetrators, or leaving the community. And so basically, the film is 24 hours in the life of these women and the debate that they have on those terms. So after I sent Dee Dee the book, went to meet with Dee Dee after she'd read the book. She had like diagrams. She had like breakdowns, outlines of. Was just like she was bursting with possibilities about how it could be adapted into a film, which is. She has a lot more experience than I do, but it was so exciting to just be with somebody who was so literally prepared for that meeting and really put me to shame. The thing I think that surprised me the most is that uh, my initial instinct for the film was much smaller and more intimate and rustic than Sarah. From the beginning, she said, "I see this as epic. It's time for women's stories to be epic. It's time for them to be shot gloriously, complicated and a kind of filmic and cinematic with a great kind of grandeur, cinematic grandeur and beauty, which I think she and Luke really captured. And that the idea that it wasn't so much about it being pretty, but it being epic. It was an epic story and it needed that kind of treatment. Peter Costco was one of the most enthusiastic members of the team, and I have to say, when they decided to pivot to a soundstage, the way that he constructed that hayloft, he didn't just construct it technically in a way that was going to make it easy to film in. He made it a place that held that debate in a way that was dynamic, because really it's a group of women and one man sitting in one room for hours. And then every now and then, leaving it for different locations. But it had to hold an audience's not only attention, but it had to give Sarah and Luke the advantage and the possibilities of a lot of different angles. So what he was able to accomplish in that hayloft, I think was, an extraordinary feat. Kita Alfred is one of the stealth bombers of the production. She not only grew up around Mennonite communities, she went straight to the Mennonite community to not only do research, but actually acquire clothing and had many Mennonite women sewing the costumes. So she was really, really tuned into the idea of how a community utilizes clothing and makes it in the most practical way. It just kind of grew into a really organic process of finding people who responded to the script, responded to the book, responded to her vision of the film, and then stuck with it during the pandemic. Held on, held on through a really long process and stayed committed to it. But I also think, these are consummate performers, and they're also theatrically trained performers. Almost all of the people in that loft have done theater. So they come from that kind of ethos. They come from that kind of technical background, that you create an ensemble and you depend on the ensemble because that's where your strength lies. I found the film really moving, and I found but not in the way that a lot of people are gonna find it moving, because I obviously knew the story and I knew where it was going. It was more the understanding that we had accomplished what we set out to do, which was to tell a story that could be accessed by a lot of different people. And Dee Dee and I made it possible for Sarah to make the film that she had always envisioned. And that for me is a really good thing. That's something I really, really love about, myself, Dee Dee, and Sarah. We represent these three kind of decades of women in film. Sarah's in her 40s, Dee Dee's in her 50s, I'm in my 60s. We're kind of the sweet pocket where things really started to change. And I've worked on, I don't know how many films I've done, 35, 40, and at least 15 of them have been female filmmakers.